the entire process, I think, is really rewarding to be able to, at least here in Chicago, to be able to connect the history of our the work that has to be done in the city, and have our students make these connections to, oh, okay, this is why things are the way that they are, or to be able to challenge the role of police and in serving or protecting, right? So I think that's the way that's the student learning aspects of it, the ability, right, to to connect it to the larger to picture, I think is definitely rewarding. But there's a lot of aspects of it, right, that are rewarding. Definitely when they get to speak to a survivor. So we've had the opportunity to have Daryl Cannon the last couple years come and talk to our kiddos, even virtually. He was an angel and was able to talk to them on Zoom. And I think that's it. It really, for them, makes it so much more real, because the students are used to reading or hearing, especially in U.S. history, talking about travesties throughout American history, but to have it be made, even they come to to flesh, and be faced with one-to-one with an actual survivor. I think that's been incredibly helpful for students in understanding the importance of why we learn this in the first place. A combination of things. I think it helped to have peers in my building, well, really one peer who had already taught the curriculum before. And so she really supported me in doing my own learning and making sure that I knew enough about this too. The Chicago Torture Justice Center's website, that also definitely helped. Having these CTU trainings for the Rep One curriculum also, I think, made me feel much more confident being able to do this curriculum justice. So I would say, yeah, the aspects of the more opportunity you have to collaborate with other educators or see their work, I think is really helpful in teaching this curriculum. The context, for sure, right? They need to, I think, understanding, because they can't just kind of drop this on students. We need to talk about, okay, why wasn't justice found for educators not in Chicago doing this? They need to understand the history of segregation in the city, the history of racialized violence, of police violence, and to be open and willing to explore that. Because I know here in Chicago, I think we have really honest conversations about things like policing. But as when I think about teachers in other areas who might be really interested in teaching this curriculum but might not have backing for it, because that's something I think that I always forget, is that some places you have principals telling them not to teach this, especially with all this stuff against critical race theory, right? It's that's I think to know that, one, there is to know the context, right? Two, to know that there is community of people that are willing to support us doing this kind of work. I think that'll definitely also be helpful. The lesson of how long it took for us to get justice, I think is important to recognize, right? That's I guess a lesson learned of it is yeah, that for justice, I mean, it shouldn't take that long to get justice, but that it is possible to get justice for survivors of any kind of travesty like what happened here in Chicago. As far as maybe for the district, I mean, I can say, at least in my 3 years that I've been at my school, at Washington High School, or within CPS, I think this kind of curriculum is just so important for us to talk about, because it really has students, again, engaging with their history, engaging with Chicago history, and putting things into the context of the modern day Black Lives Matter movements. And it just seems, yeah, I think a lesson to be learned here is that this it's working, right? That we by giving this time and space to not only to teach us stuff, but to enforce that this stuff is being taught, um, I think is a lesson learned in that, you know, positive change is possible, and that our students deserve to know the truth about what has happened. Um, and that justice, even though it might take a while, is possible. Empathy, I think, a huge one is, and I know this is, you know, something students engage in, I think, throughout, you know, their history classes and other courses too, is practicing, you know, that social emotional learning aspect, right, of empathy, of understanding, of because I think it's hard for, I mean, for everyone, right, to think, how can human beings be this terrible toward one another, right? Or how could one human being have this much, you know, control over the fate of so many people?